Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that trips up so many developers, trying to learn modern Drupal. I mean, if you've ever felt like you're just hitting a wall trying to get started, you are definitely not alone. And we're about to figure out why.
Okay, so let's just kick things off with this pretty bold statement, right? Learning Drupal and why most people are doing it wrong. The whole idea here is that if you're struggling, the problem might not actually be you. It might not even be Drupal itself. It might be the way you're trying to learn it.
So, to really get to the heart of the Drupal challenge, we have to start with this one critical point. It's a fundamental misunderstanding that really gets almost everyone. See, people come to Drupal thinking it's just another website builder, like a Squarespace or a basic WordPress install. But it's not. Modern Drupal is a content management framework. And that one little word, it changes everything. So, what does framework actually mean here? Well, think about it like this. Instead of giving you a finished house that you just paint and move into, Drupal gives you a giant pile of super high-quality, industrial-strength building materials. We're talking bricks, beams, windows, the whole shebang. It expects you to be the architect. And to do that, you have to understand how all these different pieces, things like entities, fields, and views, actually connect and work together to build a solid structure. Because Drupal is a framework, the learning path isn't just a straight line. In fact, most people who are new to it end up stumbling down one of three really common paths. But here's the kicker. As our source material shows, these aren't paths to success. They're more like well-worn traps that pretty much guarantee frustration and cause people to quit before they ever really get going. Let's just call this the official guide to giving up on Drupal, okay? First, you get stuck in the tutorial trap. You can follow along with the video just fine, but the second you try to do something on your own, you're lost. Then comes the local install nightmare, where you spend all your time acting like a systems administrator instead of a Drupal developer. And finally, you're left staring into the empty site void, a completely blank Drupal site that teaches you nothing, absolutely nothing, about how a real complex website is actually built. And this quote just perfectly captures the biggest roadblock of all. The source calls this setup hell. And honestly, is there a better name for it? You're wrestling with Docker, you're troubleshooting PHP versions, you're fighting with database connections, and you haven't even created a single piece of content yet. It's no wonder so many people just throw their hands up and walk away right here. Okay, so those frustrating paths we just talked about, they lead people to make some very specific, very common mistakes. So let's dig into a couple of these errors that can turn learning from just a tough challenge into, well, outright despair. These are the things that just stop your progress cold. This is the big one. This is probably the biggest one. You think, okay, I need to learn Drupal. So what's the first thing you do? You start trying to set up a super complex local development environment. But you're not learning Drupal. You're learning server configuration. That's a completely different job, and a really hard one at that. And this is the reality of that mistake right here. All of that time, all of that energy, it's not going towards learning about content types or how to build a view. Nope. It's just being burned trying to get the car started. You never even get a chance to learn how to drive. And then the second huge mistake is starting with a totally empty Drupal site. It's like trying to learn how to be a gourmet chef by just staring at an empty kitchen. You've got no ingredients, no recipes, no cookbooks, and you have no idea what a finished 5-star meal is even supposed to look like. It gives you zero context. And this is where it all leads. It's a place called the desert of despair. And it's that awful, awful point where you've learned just enough to be totally confused. You know enough to know what you don't know, but you have no map, no compass to find the answers. This is that critical moment where most people just conclude, you know what, Drupal's just too hard, and they give up. Okay, so we have spent a lot of time talking about what's broken. Let's pivot. Let's talk about the solution. What does a good, effective, frustration-free learning environment for Drupal actually look like? Well, according to our source, it all boils down to these 4 things. It's got to be instant, so you're not wasting your precious time on setup. It has to be realistic, showing you what a well-built site looks like from the get-go. It absolutely needs to be a safe space where you can break things and smash things and not worry about it. And, this is crucial, it has to separate the job of learning Drupal from the job of managing a server. So the big question is, how do we get all of that in one place? The answer, it turns out, is a complete shift in approach.
It means we have to abandon that build from zero mentality. Instead, you should learn from realistic, pre-built templates inside of environments that are totally disposable. You can just throw them away with zero consequences. And the source material points to a specific tool that was designed for exactly this purpose, DrupalForge.org. It was literally built from the ground up to get rid of all those friction points we've been talking about and to give you that ideal learning setup. So check this out. Just look at this number. Remember setup hell, the one that takes hours, maybe even days? This approach gets you a fully working, properly configured Drupal site in about 5 seconds. The barrier to entry? It's just gone. And what about that empty site void we talked about? Well, this solves it by giving you over 20 different templates to start with. And these aren't just empty shelves. They're realistic starter sites that already have content, views, and best practice architecture built right in. So you learn by exploring and taking apart something that already works the way it's supposed to. I mean, just look at the contrast here. It's night and day, right? The old way is all about wasting time, learning in a vacuum, and being afraid to click the wrong button. The new way is about starting instantly, seeing how real sites are built, and having the freedom to experiment without any fear. It completely changes the experience from a chore into a real exploration. All right, so let's make this personal for a second. Based on everything we've just covered, it's time to ask yourself a few really direct questions, just to see if your own learning method might be what's holding you back. First question, and be honest with yourself on this one, has most of your Drupal time been spent fighting with Docker or Lando or MAMP instead of actually, clicking around inside Drupal and building stuff? If the answer is yes, you might be learning DevOps, not Drupal. Okay, number 2. Are you starting completely from scratch? Are you just staring at that blank canvas with no examples, no reference points for how things like content types and views are supposed to work together? If so, you're basically trying to learn in a total vacuum. And finally, have you ever found yourself Googling error messages about database connections or file permissions instead of trying to figure out how the Drupal entity system works? That is a huge red flag that your environment is the real problem, not Drupal. And that really brings us to the final critical thought here. If you've been telling yourself for a while that Drupal is just too hard, it's too complicated to learn, maybe it's time to reframe the entire question. Is it possible the problem was never really Drupal at all, but the broken, frustrating environment you were forced to learn it in?